The summer break is over. It is time for Formula One to head to the Netherlands to race around the dunes of Zandvoort. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to predictions in Formula One. This time out, it's for the 2026 Dutch Grand Prix, the final race at Zandvoort for a while at least. So it's hopefully going to go out with a bang. It is a sprint race weekend. So it's going to be a sprint race, so shortened practice sessions immediately following this summer break. I think there's going to be a lot of drama this weekend, and I, for one, am all here for it. But that said, we are here to make our predictions for what's going to happen this weekend. We're going to be talking biggest positive surprise, biggest disappointment, our Grand Prix qualifying top three, our sprint winner, our podium, and then last but not least, as always, we will round things out with our one crazy prediction. Let's go ahead, without further ado, let's jump on into this thing. Let's kick things off where we do every single time. That is our pick for biggest positive surprise. And I don't know if it would be a surprise this weekend at this track specifically, but we're going with Max Verstappen this week. I think Max, having re-signed for Red Bull through the end of 2030, going to the Dutch Grand Prix, his home race, at the last contracted year for Zandvoort on the F1 calendar. This is a breeding ground for a Max, very fun Max weekend. And I, for one, think we're going to be getting it. I think we're looking at a podium minimum, potentially even a win. If there's going to be one on the calendar that Max is going to get, or definitely going to want to get, I think this is definitely it. I think we're going to see a reinvigorated Max Verstappen, and that Red Bull team had a few weeks to look at the car, figure some things out, and come and put the right foot forward. I think Max is going to have a very good weekend, and therefore is my pick for biggest positive surprise. Let's move on quickly now to biggest disappointment. This week, I am going with a team pick for biggest disappointment. I am actually going with Ferrari as my pick for biggest disappointment. And I think this one is much more of a meta reason than anything else. We are looking at Ferrari post-summer break, where they have been challenged in the first half of the season to really establish themselves as the second fastest team. You now come out of the summer break, you've had a few weeks to head to Zandvoort to try and put your best foot forward. Or if you look forward just one more race weekend, we have Monza coming in 2 weeks following this Grand Prix weekend. And we all know that Ferrari puts every single egg they have in that basket. And so I think we actually could be looking at a bit of a look ahead spot, not necessarily for the drivers, but for the team. Obviously, the Italian Grand Prix means to them more than any other team on the grid. And so I think we could be looking at a letdown spot for Ferrari. We saw last year that they had a very dreadful Dutch Grand Prix with both Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton crashing out, whether of their own mistakes or not, at the same corner coming out of the hairpin. There was at turn 4 or 5 or whichever corner it is, the really high banked left-hander. And so, not to say that that's exactly the same reason that they did bad last year, but there's just something about Zandvoort and Ferrari. I think Ferrari will comfortably be the 4th fastest car, and they might even be pushing, maybe not even finishing ahead of that. So it'll be very interesting to see if they're able to stay focused and push forward, but with the Italian Grand Prix looming, I'm less sure. Let's move on now to our qualifying top 3. This is our Grand Prix qualifying, and we're going to begin in P3. And this time out, I am going with Lando Norris, mainly because McLaren, very similar to their time in Hungary the last couple of years, have had a couple of very, very good Dutch Grand Prix, and so this feels right up Lando's alley here to try and, continue to build on the momentum that McLaren has been able to do over the last handful of rounds. They, like every other team, has had a few weeks to look ahead and try and put their best foot forward, and I think we could see a very solid weekend from McLaren, potentially challenging for podiums. I think this is going to be a very interesting weekend for them, especially knowing that at Zandvoort is a very different style of track, and I'm very curious to see what they can do over a single lap. But P3, Lando Norris in my books. As we move on now to second place, I am going with Kimi Antonelli, our championship leader, starting on the front row here in Zandvoort, in the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort, is the words I attempted to say incorrectly. This feels like just something that you can't not put at this point. Kimi has been fantastic. Even in weekends where he may not necessarily have been the fastest, he's still done everything necessary to get the maximum amount of points for that is available to him. And this is going to be another one of those. I think he's going to put his best foot forward. And while I'm not sure the Mercedes is going to be the best this weekend, I think he'll be right there and challenging definitely for the pole as well as the win here in the Netherlands. But that leaves pole position. It's the one, it's the only. This feels like one of those weekends. Max Verstappen is going to come in and put it on pole somehow, some way. It's just, it's going to be one of those where it's like, he's like fourth, like 2/10 down, going into his final lap, and he'll somehow squeak out a pole or even just dominate, and he'll end up on the front row in the top spot when it's all said and done, and everyone will look around and go, how did he do that? This feels like a Max Verstappen special weekend, and I'm leaning all the way in. I'm putting all my eggs in one basket, and his name is Max Verstappen. All right, let's take a quick respite, and let's talk about our sprint winner this weekend. Zandvoort as a sprint race is a very interesting proposition. Zandvoort is not necessarily the raciest or racing friendly track. It is very narrow in the middle portion of the circuit, and really the only overtaking opportunities realistically is basically just turn one. There's a couple other corners where you could send it. There's the straight on the back side of the track, as well as where else am I thinking of? We've seen overtakes like through the carousel, but ultimately this is a track that not necessarily promotes overtakes. I am curious to see what these cars with the battery reliance, if that is able to change anything. Obviously with the ground effects era that we had and previously, the dirty era and the way those cars were set up, Zandvoort was, I think, realistically never really going to work in the long run. But with these new cars, I'm very curious to see what the 1 year of Zandvoort with this regulation set is going to look like. So that said though, for our sprint winner, I am going with Lando Norris as my sprint winner. This feels like kind of what I was saying earlier. McLaren has just really had a good run at Zandvoort, and they proved at Hungary when they have a track they feel confident at, they've been able to produce results. And so we're going with a Lando Norris sprint win, coming off of a very strong Hungary and keeping things up after the summer break with a sprint win around Zandvoort. All right, let's move on forward to our race podium. And this is a podium I would be very excited to see, because the way I have it playing out in my head, I think would actually be very exciting and very fun to see. Let's kick things off. P3 in the Dutch Grand Prix on Sunday, Kimi Antonelli. Kimi Antonelli finishing on the podium in 2026. I know, huge shocker. But that said, I think it's the rest of the podium that really tells the whole story here. I have Kimi Antonelli starting on the front row. He has been on an unreal form of pace this season, and I think another podium under his belt is certainly something we should all expect going into this weekend. But it's the story for P2 that I think is going to tell the whole thing, because in P2, I'm going with Lando Norris to finish second at the Dutch Grand Prix. The way I had this one playing out, it has a lot to do with P1. So without further ado, and then we'll go back and talk about it, my winner for the 2026 Dutch Grand Prix is Max Verstappen. The way I see this one playing out is that Red Bull will not necessarily have the fastest car in race pace and race trim, but the way I see this one playing out, and we got to see a little bit of this previously in Miami, Lando Norris and Kimi Antonelli, I think will have the opportunity to battle it out for second position in the race, and that battling, slowing each other down, is what allows Max Verstappen to build the gap, to build the lead, and is able to bring it home when it's all said and done and the dust settles behind. It feels like one of those weekends where if Max gets challenged, I think Red Bull could potentially struggle, but if the teams get caught fighting each other, I think he could pull away with the win. I could see something like this happening. I know Kimi Antonelli and Lando Norris are relatively smart drivers. They know that battling like that will slow them down in the long run, but at the same time, when you're battling for P2, potentially trying to chase down Max for a win, things could get a little interesting. But I don't know. What do you guys think? My race podium around Zandvoort, Kimi Antonelli P3, Lando Norris P2, and a Max Verstappen home win. And then last but not least, we have our one crazy prediction, and spoiler alert at how late I'm actually recording this. This is going to go up mere hours before the first practice session. but my prediction involves Liam Lawson and Yuki Tsunoda. Obviously, Isa Kadjar was injured over the summer break and is unable to, drive in Zandvoort. And so Liam Lawson getting the call up to the main Red Bull team, and Yuki Tsunoda, the Red Bull reserve driver, stepping in for Liam in his car in V-Car, and will get an opportunity to drive the 2026 cars over the course of the weekend. My one crazy prediction: in the Grand Prix on Sunday, Yuki Tsunoda finishes ahead of Liam Lawson in the main Red Bull. Why? Who absolutely knows? Maybe Liam gets a little bit of PTSD from last season when he got 2 whole races in the main team before being demoted back down to V-Carb. Maybe something goes wrong. Maybe he's not used to the car. Also very possible. Yuki, obviously not driving any car, so he is behind the 8 ball there. But a short weekend, only a single practice session, immediately hopping into a qualifying session, sprint race, qualifying, all that stuff. Yeah, it's gonna get interesting. Yuki Tsunoda finishes ahead of Liam Lawson in the Grand Prix. But there we have it, guys. Our first predictions following the summer break are done and gone. We will be back when the weekend is all said and done to take a look at what we saw over the course of the weekend, as well as take a look at these predictions and see how we did in the grand scheme of things. I think this is going to be a very all or nothing type of weekend for me, but I need those kind of weekends. I'm trying to close back up into first in our Community Predictions Championship. Speaking of our Community Predictions Championship, it is after the summer break, the perfect time to get started in your bid for a championship, as well as to prove that you know wheel week to week. If you're interested in joining our Community Predictions Championship, head to the link down in the description, join the Discord, and leading up to every Grand Prix weekend, I make a call for these exact same predictions, and you're able to show that you know wheel more than the rest of us. I hope you guys are going to enjoy the first round following the summer break. I know I will. And until then, guys, I'll see you in the next one.